So hello everyone, we are back after a really nice and inspiring and important previous talk and short break we had with the guest on some also interesting spot in Skopje, and now we are back with new, how to say, new energy, new important guests. So we have on this presentation Karla Crnčević, dramaturgist and film worker from Croatia. She will present their initiative in Croatia, Enough with the Cuts. Then presentation on different fights in social context with Tara Rukeci. We have Kristina Ampeva from a Loud Textile Worker Organization, and Kira Vasiljev, who will speak about the devalorization of the labor. And me, Filip Jovanovski, activist, visual artist, cultural worker. There are similarities. I see similarities in all presentations. We have Kristina and Tara, who will speak maybe from the position of the political space and using of art and culture in workers' rights, and we have Kire, who was previously activist and our friend and comrade, who now is on the other side. He works in the Ministry of Labor, which is positive and good, and he will share his experience. And Karla, she will share her experience, who are somehow connected, and we can speak later with the initiatives that we started here about the raising awareness of the importance of the funding of cultural scene. So we'll start with Karla.
Okay. Thank you. So hello everybody. First, thanks for warm welcome. Actually, Vesna Vuković was invited. She is one of the members of Collective Block from Zagreb, but then she couldn't come, and I'm here to talk a little bit about initiative Enough with the Cuts. I was taking part in an initiative in the beginning of 2019. So I worked a lot of years as a film worker in different production conditions, and during that time I started to think about working conditions, and it's very specific period in Croatia because a lot of foreign production companies are coming to film there, and it's some kind of special thing that is happening, that Hollywood is somehow dislocating on a periphery of Europe and using the labor force from Europe to film to produce these like commercial movies. So after that, I started to be a part of initiative in 2019, Enough with the Cuts, that emerged as a result of years of dissatisfaction with project funding cuts and the lack of transparency in evaluating proposals. Initiative started as a reaction on results of call for proposals for the program of public need in culture of the Republic of Croatia in 2019, which were published at the end of December 2018. So, a Ministry of Culture in Croatia was talking a lot of, open quote, interest of Republic of Croatia and ensuring the conditions for the development of cultural and artistic production and participation in culture. And as one of the specific goals in 2019 to 2021 strategic plan emphasizes the development of non-institutional independent culture and visual arts. However, the results of the call, as well as general cultural policy during past years, were and still are pushing the artistic and cultural field backwards. Backwards in terms of working conditions, but also in terms of making big distance from a different type of audiences. Because of the financing programs, in this way, culture became centralized and consumed by almost only producers of art and culture. In the proclamation, Collective Bloc from Zagreb pointed out that, for example, their fundings from 2007 were reduced for 75% despite their continuous work. And on first meeting we had with other collectives, individuals, associations and institutions working in cultural and art production, we decided we do not agree to reproduce ministry cuts further and to low labor costs and to exclude audience from different kind of programs. Therefore, we strongly opposed the decision of ministry and pointed out their devastating consequences, which are even fewer works of art, even worse working conditions for cultural workers. We oppose cultural policy that pushes us to commercialize while public funds are allocated with any transparency of expert council ratings. So initiative organized signing petition and protest in front of the Ministry of Culture in Zagreb in February this year. Petition was signed by 150 people and 1,500 people, sorry, and protest got some reaction of Minister Nina Obuljen-Koržinek, and her answer was that funding for culture are bigger than during the last years. So then we decided to do analysis and to compare different years, and it just turned out that it's not true that the fundings are cutted for the 16% from the 2018. And if you see, I don't know, different fields like visual arts, publishing, there are some increases in some fields, but in general, funding was cutted for 16%. So, I will just quote the minister, what she said about the initiative. Budget increased in absolute terms and as percentage of a state budget, so there is no allegation that cuts are being made. On the contrary, the original appropriation in 2 years were increased by around 40 million euros only through European Social Fund and calls for project proposal of the Youth Arts and Culture, Arts 54+, and Culture and Center supporting the development of public civic partnership in culture. Program divided more than 90 million kunas for program to encourage cultural participation. So this was the strongest thing that she said, that through the European Social Fund they raised a budget. But the ministry announcement, which addresses the fact that the atmosphere which is happening in Croatia of hysteria surroundings, where wider society are considering artists and cultural workers as ones wasting public money. Any mention of an increase in the useless cultural budget is enough to make the public uncritically angry with non-workers, and Ministry of Culture used this as a spin. For even if the original budget had increased tenfold, this would still say nothing about the structure and purpose of this increase, the way in which it spilled over into the work of organization and cultural workers. Equally manipulative is the invocation of European Social Fund, which says nothing about function of the European Social Fund and its beneficiary structure, the specific administrative burdens of such funding, the imposition of thematic focuses, and the gap between funded programs, which is funding these European Social Funds, and actual activities of Association of Culture. So also this funding of European Social Fund, it's just temporary measure, and we can expect to this funding be relocated into the Ministry of Work or Ministry of some other ministry, because it's not actually any secure budget for or strategic plan for cultural financing. So these cuts are directly affect to programs, art and cultural production, audience which is participating and educating through these programs, but mostly they affect art and cultural workers and their already bad working conditions. So maybe the biggest problems right now with which this initiative is working are working conditions, but also unawareness of cultural and art workers, that they are actually not middle class, but working class, because they don't control their means of production, but rather they are selling their labor to different class. So also when we are talking about work conditions, here we talk about health and social insurance, impossibility of sick leave, working space, maternity leave, tools for production and position on market of art scene. So the second big issue is a draft of law on independent artists, which was brought up also last year. It was so a lot of problems happened from the 2016 when the draft was announced. One working group was working on which was working on this draft, met just 2 times, and draft wasn't made in a way it was announced it's going to be made. So the main issues with the draft are minimal and maximal census for an artist, which means if artist doesn't earn 400 kunas, or it's around 500 euros per month, he's going to be excluded from association, and he's going to lose this health and social insurance. Now around 1,300 art and cultural workers are included in this association. So other question is category which artists have to fulfill to get into the association, and this is think of like a category about special contribution to the Croatian culture and art scene. It's very subjective category, and artists are usually not accepted because this category. Also, the funds for associations are not increasing, but they are talking about opening one more category. It's called like cultural expert category, because now the only authors are included in this association. So many artists are afraid of this category because they are afraid of competition in this kind of field. There is also a question of young artists entering the art production. They have to fulfill different conditions, which makes us really witnesses a growing class stratification. Tuition fees of academies are high, and it's very hard to survive and do professional reproduction in art field. So if you want to enter association as a young artist, you have to have like a lot of master classes, time to spend producing art which is recognized in your academy or faculty. So this makes us witnesses of moving people away from arts, especially contemporary ones. Initiative was thinking about this law draft, like open question about relation of the state towards the art production. We are also problematizing paradigma of exceptionality of artistic work, selection and award measures importance of cultural and artistic work. Initiative is for solidarity support and insurance for the sake of social value despite apparent vulnerability. The initiative think that are bringing the new Artist Act is a new unique opportunity for the artistic community to raise the fundamental question on the essence of the relationship between state and the society towards the artistic and cultural work. So third issue is open call for non-profit media. During the ex-minister Zlatko Hasanbegović, the non-profit media was totally cutted with the fundings. So the non-profit media field became very dependent on voluntary work of journalists and researchers, and now the first open call is out, and it's, I don't know, it's an issue that we are also trying to talk about. Fourth issue is reducing of spaces for cultural production and presentation and non-transparent political decisions about spaces. So we lost autonomy of Zagreb Dance Center, student center, which was occupied by the right-wing artists and workers. Then Kino Europa was closed, Kino Grič, and recently Rijeka lost Mali Salon, which was like extended space for Museum of Contemporary Art in Rijeka. This is this Mali Salon took Croatian public television, Croatian national television took it back. So it's also a problem with the television, which acts like a private corporation, not public service. Also, Croatian national television refuses to show movies and works produced and filmed in Croatia by the Croatian and regional artists and film workers. And sixth issue, it's Croatian Audiovisual Center, which was also very disturbed in last few years with a lot of changes inside of structure and trying to find a new way to function and to make funding for movies. There is, so I talked in the beginning about these big companies and big private productions coming to film in Croatia. I think there is a huge problem with awareness of film workers about working conditions and working hours, differences between paychecks between them and foreign film workers which are coming here. And also there is a law which they don't have to pay tax, so it's 25% of tax rebate getting back to them. In the beginning, we all thought it's going to be good for film industry. It's going to be somehow replaced into the domestic film production, but that didn't happen. So I will shortly read demands of the initiative, Enough with the Cuts. So, initiative demands to stop the collapse of public funding for culture, enough with the market logic and competition among artists and workers in culture, institutions and associations. We demand budget increase. We want to work of the cultural councils to be public, based on clear criteria. There are many undemocratic procedures for deciding on allocation of public funds. We demand conditions in which artists and cultural workers can live off their work. We demand work and social protection. There are plenty of shameful working conditions and precarious form of work that bring short-term and uncertain project funding. We asked the Ministry of Culture to renovate existing public cultural infrastructure from neighborhoods and local areas to large representative institutions. There is enough systematic destruction of public cultural infrastructure at all levels. Initiative also demand public funding for non-profit media as an area of public interest and critical journalism. There is a lot of cutting and narrowing the space of information, education and criticism. So initiative was temporarily active. After that, we didn't work so much because of, again, specific working conditions in which we all are. So right now we are thinking about methods and ways we are going to talk about these problems and demand some results or, I don't know, talking with ministry about these problems. We had few meetings and we're talking about strategy. So we think it's good to do a research on different fields, like on film worker field, on visual arts, on publishing, translators, curators, and then to try empower people to talk about their problems. We also thought about radio station and about some open demands on ministry about like talking together. So in the end, this was already started doing Nina Gojić, Selma Banić, Tajana Josimović and Ena Jurov with this book that I brought from Croatia. They did some research on the field. It's called How Do Female Artists Live in Rijeka, and it's really interesting according to the fact that now Rijeka is capital of culture. European capital of culture. So I wanted just to read a few things from the book and I will end with this. So this is about the thing that I was talking about this category of special contribution to the field of arts for Republic of Croatia. So a friend of mine whose biography is similar to mine applied for an independent artist status and got a response that she meets all the requirements, but that her contribution to the culture of the Republic of Croatia was not sufficient. For how long will we be in the position where we do not make a sufficient contribution to the culture of Republic of Croatia? Until somebody says, yes, this is the moment, she has been working for 8, 9, 10, 12 years already. Now she's making contribution. So throughout the years we have experienced different reactions and some really unpleasant ones where we were made feel that we should keep our motherhood a private matter. For a while we were allowed to bring our children to work, but it was later banned due to work safety reasons. As a parent, I sometimes had to breach this rule because simply had no other choice. Most young women writers have no children. Keeping a work and family balance as a freelancer is quite difficult. Presently, artist residencies abroad are among the most important sources of earnings for writers. As a mother of a school-aged child, I could not be a resident artist. I cannot leave my child for a month or two or take it out of the school. That's why most resident artists are men or female colleagues without children. Yeah, so the publication is here, you can take it, and I'm open for further discussion after other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clara. Later we can ask more questions, open the debate. So next is Tara. We'll hear from her the experience of how the video and film can be used as a tool for workers' fight, and I think it can be inspiring. For me, it was very inspiring when I first met the team from Zrenjanin, and I find a lot of similarities with what the textile workers in Štip were doing, but also later can make these connections and more discussion. So,
thank you. I will be short, and I'm here to present Zrenjaninski Social Forum, actually Workers' Video Club. I will say a few words about beginning. I mean, that's important because all that conditions when Workers' Video Club was made. Group of workers from Jugoremedia. Jugoremedia was a pharmacy factory, and Robi and Bane were workers in that factory. They decide to unite shares, money, efforts, and work, and build ordained factory for the production of antibiotics. In that period, when Jugoremedia was in, like other factories, in process of privatization, and Dr. Nebojša Popov, he was sociologist from Zrenjanin and worker education activist, gave idea to record all that events in that period. And how dangerous this topic was in that time, while mainstream media showed no interest in that aspect of self-organizing. So this group of activists turned to collecting materials for the first documentary. And on the 1st May 2011, the first in the series of festival, Da nam živi, živi rad, were located in the civic reading room in the legacy of Dr. Nebojša Popov. And this festival, on this festival documentary was screened, the first one of Zrenjanin Social Forum, and that movie was supported by Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. Soon this festival became international. Movies from the region as well as film were screened. Eminent filmmakers such as Jeremić Žilnik. This festival, sorry, my English is not well, and everything can be easy on Serbian. Sorry. No? You can understand me? Yeah, okay. Workers' Video Club recorded today, we can say 40 documentaries, because yesterday last one was shown in Little Moskva. I will explain what is Little Moskva. And documentaries screened at many festivals in Belgrade, Ljubljana, and Berlin. Today, Workers' Video Club operates through the self-education of its members. And I will give you films from the production of Workers' Video Club, but I want to say why Workers' Video Club is important for another activities of Zrenjanin Social Forum. When we speak about workers' position, workers' rights, where are workers mean? How you can have communication with that people. So we use Workers' Video Club like platform to start communication with workers. For example, if we want to make a movie about workers in a cable factory, who can better give you information than workers in that factory? More than that, who better can make that movie? I can't, I'm a sociologist in NGO. I mean, it's it's not possible. Well, how to motivate to organize workers to use camera like political weapon? Because that movies actually are not just witness. I mean, that workers are not just, you know, yeah, no, no. They can make actually movies, but there is many issues. For example, mobile phones, camera are forbidden in name of productivity in many factories, and it's hard to record work conditions. Also, I mean, many of workers have bad relation between, and you know, all especially in private sector. I mean, it's not possible. I spoke with workers in a textile factory, and I asked to explain me how factory looks like. I mean, to give me description. And the first, what she said, okay, on the beginning we have a big box. For what? For mobile phones. So it's hard to record, but it's evidence. If we can speak about that conditions, but if you have evidence how that looks like, it's a different story. And why people in local trust to Zrenjaninski Socijalni Forum? Because problems and everyday struggle we share with that people. I mean, we are precarious and we go project to project, and when we work with people from culture, they are precarious. Workers in factory, actually, they are precarious. For example, we work with one guy who is on a local TV, private TV, and he's editor. He educated us to use After Effects and editing. I mean, and what are results of our activity? It's not just 14 movies. It's good communication with workers who want to enjoy us and have place to be active. I mean, every human is a creator. I don't want to speak about criteria for art. It's not point. We don't make art. We create. And when we ask people to enjoy us, they go, oh, I don't know how to make movie. I mean, I will give you my experience with Zrenjaninski Socijalni Forum. I'm here because Bane called one day me and asked, oh, we heard about you. Do you want to say a few words in front of the camera about Sero Mihalj? Sero Mihalj was a hero. And I said, oh, wait, I never saw camera, I never say anything in public. No, just relax and come with us. So 1 hour later, I was in front of the Culture Center and say, few words about Sero Mihalj. After that, we spoke about anti-fascism and other topics. For 1 year later, they called me again and asked to say a few words about concentration camp in town, because in the first time when I met Bane and Robbie, I said about my family and that camp. And yesterday, that movie about about people who, which family was murdered in the Second War, was screened in Little Moscow. Yeah, I want to say more than 60 people was on pre-action last night. And many people, today Robbie called me and said how many people come to Bane, and Robbie said, oh, I have materials, I have photographs, we have some documents, and ask for another movie. And it's important because Little Moscow actually is a village near to Zrenjanin, and I don't know, maybe 1,000 of citizens, and 60 came to watch that movie. And why? It's a movie about their family, about their space, village and everything. You must stay in touch with people. And they recognize themselves like someone who can give something and show something. So, sorry, I lost my concept. Yeah. Yeah, and I want to say that we have a good cooperation with institutions, and we cooperate with public sector, and because we give space to all that people. On different topics, it's unbelievable that someone can't find something what is a struggle in that moment and in family or something like that. So I will say something about movies. Movies of Workers Video Club, mi biramo svoj put, pruga od Srbije do Švajcarske, radničko samoupravljanje, jedno iskustvo, od radnika do čobana, krizi, alternativa, rekorderi, obrani berači, danas bi imala 70 godina, svet rada u borbi protiv krupnog kapitala, napuštena gnezda, Raonik, Zrenjaninski rašomon, Tiket ili život, Servo Mihalj kombinat, and žena majka policajka. And last one is Crvene brazde. So for example, kombinat Servo Mihalj, the film talks about socialist production at the time of socialism in Yugoslavia. In the movie we talk about workers' solidarity, culture, sports, and why workers did not defend when Yugoslavia collapsed. And the another one is Zrenjanin Rashomon. Fun fact, yesterday I was in protest of workers of Ohrid, it's chemical industry, and one guy, and one guy from Prokuplje said, oh, I can remember that when I worked in Zrenjanin, water was yellow. And we spoke about water. We don't have drink water from 20 years. Yeah. So we made a movie about that, and many debates and everything. And now some group of one group from Zrenjanin. It's not NGO, it's something different, but they are on court with few people from local politics because they shared public money to private sector to make a factory for water, and we still don't have water in town. I mean, I don't know, can you imagine how it is that when you go somewhere and say, okay, I can drink water in hotel. Yeah, I have that trip all time. I mean, I can drink water, yeah. And it's not possible that people, if you ask someone in Zrenjanin, do you want to help us to make a movie about water, that people said, oh no, I'm not interested in. And that how we are in touch with people. Okay, few movies, it's about anti-fascism and historical revisionism in town. We have problem with right-wing in town. They want to change name to from Zrenjanin to Petrograd. And every time when they start with that, we show movie and people come and we have debate, and many people are on, I mean, it's against that. We have movie about migration because in Vojvodina, especially South Vojvodina, many of people are Hungarian and Slovakian, so they get a passport and go to Europe to work. So we have now a big issue because, for example, on Hungarian I can say hogy vagy, köszönöm szépen, and nothing else. And I have a condition to get Hungarian passport and go to Europe to work. And yesterday I spoke with many people here on protest, and they say how here is station same with Bulgarian passport, and how they sons and daughters are somewhere in world, and many people go out just because here you can't live. And I think that's it. Mean short movies, Ticket to Life, about gambling in Serbia, and mean topics of movies are something ordinary, something we live all day, and it's not possible that you don't have a touch with, mean that you are not in touch with that. So in the end, I will give you copies of some movies, but I don't have enough. I gave, I don't know, on protest 20 copies. So here's, I don't know, City of Heroes, Picket Pickles, Rashomon about water, and I think that's it. And for in the end, I will show you one movie, Picket Pickles, about people who work, precarious workers on fields, who work on fake ID, fake student ID, that people are, I don't know, in 40s year and work on a student ID. And that's it. I'm sorry for my English. I think you understand me. Yeah.
Thank you, Tara. It was inspiring, and it reminded me somehow of actually when Ivana invited me to moderate this panel. The reason why I'm moderating, because actually the connection with the cultural center textile, with the working with the textile workers, which actually we were inspired, and that's how everything started with the amateur groups, cultural groups in the factories that existed in Yugoslavia. So your work, what? in Yugoslavia, there were amateur groups like in the factories in Štip. There were two huge factories, Makedonka and Stibo, and both have, especially Makedonka, there is a small archive of that amateur group of musicians, drama association, etc. So through culture, I somehow started to work with textile workers in Štip. Actually, in 2016, we created together with then individual activists, Kristina, Denis, and other people from Štip. It was during the time of the regime, we created a cultural space for workers called Kuc Textile, Cultural Centre Textile. So we founded one abandoned restaurant, I think it was, and we adapted for a space where, for political space where the workers can gather and speak about their problems. And that's how everything started. Kristina can tell us more where they are now, because many things changed from that time. You created another organization and so on.
So you said the whole presentation, I can go home now. First of all, sorry for my bad English. So I write a little things here, and I wanted to start about textile industry in the time of Yugoslavia. So that's how we have these examples from then, and that's why I think Kuc Textile is part of that time, and Textiliada event and all of other stuff that we do. So in Yugoslavia, there were two huge facilities were built, Tetex in Tetovo and Makedonka in Štip, in my town. So the basic for the development of Macedonian textile industry is the Makedonka cotton processing plant, and Tetex as a producer for wool, and factory for producing silk in Nonča Kamišo in Veles. About Makedonka in Štip, that was a huge complex with a modern and the largest in ex-Yugoslavia. The whole complex was planned with restaurants, shop, ambulance. I think there was also a library and lab. And for the needs of the workers, Makedonka built a complex of apartment buildings. They give credits for the children of the workers who were working there and the children who were studying. So they also had a camp at the Lake Ohrid and summer restaurant in Mount Plačkovica, hotel at Lake Doiran, and in Makedonka the record number of employees was in 1987 with 5,900 people. Also about this cultural society in Makedonka factory was formed in 1965, and they have about 11 performers, I think. They have concerts in Štip, but also in the other countries in ex-Yugoslavia. So with the opening of Makedonka, it was natural to, and also necessary, to open, how to say, garment factory, confeccija. Yeah, garment factory. So that's how Stibo was formed in 1962 as a unit within Makedonka factory. They start working with 100 people, but the number was growing very, very fast. They, in 1967, they transformed into socialist organization, organization of associated labor, I think it would be translated somehow. So they later became a separate company. They were producing, designing, sewing, and they work also with distribution of this men's, women's, and children clothes. The most interesting for me, because I'm living there, is that a steel factory was opening another little factories in eastern part of Macedonia, in that undeveloped eastern region. So also they are publishing newspapers. That's how Filip have this idea about publishing newspapers. So this year we published our second number of newspaper Textilec. So large producers from Australia and China appeared on the global chain. So with the wars and the breakup of Yugoslavia, it's been, it started with this privatization, and people don't have any more jobs. So now in my city, that is also still a textile city, the last statistic data is that there are 6,000 workers in the textile sector. But it's bad because they don't have their rights, their labor rights. Okay. So I also work there in the textile company. That's why we found this organization, because it's hard to find a job in Eastern Macedonia, especially in Štip. You can, as a woman, you can work just in some boutique, market, or textile industry. But like I said, this is a woman industry. There are more than 80% of them are women. So the working condition in that time when I was working in this textile industry, they are horrible. But with humiliation, mobbing, and low wages, and then for the textile sector, there was minimum wage who was below the minimum wage in Macedonia. They must meet quota norm so they can get their minimum wage. But after I start in the company when I was working, I started to talk about trade union and organizing, and because we have a contract of 1 month, they fired me. So no, it's not firing, but your contraction is over, and that's all, folks. So we decide, few of us decide to create this, in that time, another organization. So we had courage to speak because that was taboo in that time. And we started to write a project, and because we need the money to go in the other cities to see the situation there. And it was a disaster to see that there, in the eastern part of our country, there are they're even worse, the situation, or the salary is even lower than in Štip. So I must tell that I'm thinking that this situation, these silent workers, this not just in the textile sector, but in whole private sector, it's because that privatization after Yugoslavia. And also almost 3 decades of pressure make them to be silent. So we somehow managed to build some group of workers in the eastern parts of Macedonia, also in Štip. And some of the workers want to cooperate with us and to tell us what is going on in their factories. They don't have a problem to take a picture in the factory and send me and tell about, I don't know, the boss asked from us to return him part of the salary, or K-15, that is annual leave, some payment, I don't know. And now we know the working condition in every factory in Eastern Macedonia. It's not hard for us to know that information. Like I said, in former Yugoslavia, that was the case, and people have trade unions and have their own cultural events in their factories, and they were publishing newspapers. So we are not cultural workers. I am worker just, but thanks to Filip and Ivana, thanks to this art and culture, we made this place, Cultural Art Center Textile, and we ran that center for 3 years, and our association is there, and we have free legal aid for the workers, and we have constant debates and workshops for labor rights, for human rights, for union organizing. And but also it was easy to start with art and culture, because in that time, like I said, it was taboo, and everyone was scared because the bosses were like, I don't know, gods. So we started with these cultural events. We have theaters, and what we have with the kids of the textile worker, we have workshops. So they were coming here, and after that we can tell them, so you can stay after this. We will have a workshop about unionizing, and that's how we start mobilizing people. So if you ask, Kira can tell us, if you ask the workers, do you believe in the institution like labor inspectorate, or I don't know, union, or in NGO sector, they will tell you that they believe in NGO sector. They don't believe in institution because of their corruption. They don't believe in unions because they don't know their presidents, they don't know the representative of the union. What we are doing for 3 years, like on glass and textiles, law textile worker, we urge the institution to go out on the field, to go in the factories and to see the conditions, to give warning to the owners. So like I said about the minimum wage, it was minimum wage for the textile sector below the legal minimum wage in our country. So in these 3 years, we used the political situation. So the minimum wage was increased for 2 times, and next year will be 3rd time, I think, if they increase it. That what is a problem, still is a problem, is discrimination of the pregnant woman. The bosses believe that pregnant women are lazy. So this contract on 1 month, that is precarious work. Our country is was interesting for the foreign investors, because our ex-government was telling them, come in our country, invest in our country, and the minimum wage is, I don't know, in that time 150 euros. And there is no union, like I said, so the conditions are still, I don't know, in some of the factories are gross. But that what is happening in these 3 years, and that I'm proud of it, it's that for 25 years there was any strikes in the companies. In these 3 years, we have 7 in eastern part of Macedonia. And they believe us, the workers believe us. Now they're not so scared from the inspectorate and unions, but they don't believe in unions, and that is a problem. So we're telling them that we as an organization can't manage a lot of these problems, because we don't have so much capacity, and we are not union to enter in those factories and solve the problems. So in the next year we are planning to work more with establishing some unions in the factories. And I think that there are a lot of organizations, maybe not so much in Macedonia, but here in Serbia, and these countries around us, like Bosnia and Albania, the working conditions are the same, and we should be, I don't know, unite and start working this regionally, not just glass and textiles in Macedonia, and I don't know, Filip with the cultural workers, and I don't know. We should talk about living wage, not the minimum wage. We should talk about independent unions, not unions who are close to the political parties. Because it's necessary to raise awareness that we are also people, and we can go. I don't want to go in Germany or I don't know where. I think that we can do better here, because we had some time better. Yugoslavia was better. It's not nostalgically, but we had once. And in this capitalist world, I think that there are a lot of organized people who know that this capitalist idea is not a good idea, and they start to organizing, and they are protesting, and there are a lot of unions in the other countries who are working properly, and we should have practices from the other countries, and we should manage in our context because all region it's the same thing. So sorry for my bad English. Sorry if I made some mistakes, but after that I will answer the question if there is some.
Okay, we will end with Kira, and I think it's very important that he's here from, as I said, in a positive way from the other side. He will give his perspective, and I hope we will have opportunity at the end after the screening. Maybe the Minister of Labor, Mila Carovska, will come and she will share maybe, and we will share our ideas of this today's conference with her and speak about maybe some future collaboration with institutions. But Kira can give more precise insight from inside about that, as you title your presentation, the valorization of labor.
Yes, hello from the other side. I was listening. Filip is my Adele. I was listening closely to your presentations, and I must say that most of them are really precise, concise, and especially the presentation of Violeta. Also the booklet that Vladan gave us about defining the non-materiality of cultural labor. It's also interesting, but there's always an absence of strategies for future struggles, etc. Anyways, I was also listening to you using the word neoliberalism, but I'm not sure that it's defined well. And I don't know, maybe I should ask you, what do you understand under the word neoliberalism? Or maybe I should answer it. But anyways, I mean that the essence of neoliberalism is financialization of human relations, meaning that the interpersonal communication between people is based on money relations. And it's a reaction of the previous Fordist mode of production, which was characterized by full employment, constant rise of salaries, unions playing an important part of the whole economic structure, let's say planned capitalist structure, etc. And neoliberalism actually comes from the financial elites, from bankers. So it's their language, you know. They're speaking only about money. They don't speak about anything else. And when you have that kind of language, speaking only based on finances, on money, then it's really difficult to define the value of the non-material labor, because everything comes to what is produced. What's the value of the production that you're contributing to the product that you're contributing to? Material labor in neoliberal era is much more valued than non-material labor. I was also speaking yesterday, listening yesterday about a discussion about redistribution. I think then Antonia, was it? Yeah. Redistribution without rights. And that's also a neoliberal concept, because you're only speaking about redistribution of money without getting the rights. It's actually interesting because in Macedonia there was a law on progressive taxation, and the taxation mass was basically on the shoulders of people who do precarious work, right? And they were not giving you rights, they were only taking your money, trying to redistribute those money for social transfers, etc. But at the end it came to non-existing, right? The labor codes, that's a really interesting question, because the labor code in the Republic of Macedonia is the most exclusive law. And not just in Republic of Macedonia, in most of the countries, labor code is an exclusive code, exclusive law. If the labor law is vaji, what's the word? Implies, exactly. If labor law implies for you, then you're privileged. Then you have a privileged position in the society. Basically, you have the citizen status. In Macedonia, 500,000, I think, workers only fall under the scope of the labor law. Around 400,000 workers do not. And that's a question that needs to be discussed, because most of the time when we discuss about the labor law in the institution or wherever, everywhere where they discuss about the labor law, they're only discussing about making the law more precise for the people who fall under the scope of the labor law, but they don't discuss about broadening the scope of the labor law, which is really interesting. And nobody's discussing about it. You as culture workers or freelancers need to find a position in the economic structure we can, or maybe the first step, speaking that with Biljana previously, the first step would be to position yourself in the social dialogue in order to find the people that you can discuss with. I mean, to sit down on a table with the power, you know, and address all the issues that you need to address. How can you accomplish that? That's another question. But the study that Violeta was presenting defines clearly the systematic structure of the Macedonian economy, Macedonian institutions, and where can you find space in order to position yourself. That's another question we can discuss further, but I think that's only for people that are from Macedonia, I think, nevertheless. Guy Standing calls the precarious denizens. Those are people that don't have, not nationality, how does it say? Yeah, citizenship is a form of, denizen, citizen. That is especially valid for migrants in foreign countries because they don't have, they don't enjoy any right, no social, no health, no, they don't even have passport, they don't exist. But it's also the case in national states. I mean, maybe when you have redistribution without rights, then you only give taxes. You give taxes and you're not represented. The Americans say taxation without representation, which is a bad concept. Actually, you need to be represented when you give taxes, right? When you have redistribution, then they give you money for all public services. They are not interested. Everything is privatized. I mean, they go hand in hand, like the health and social, sports activities. All those activities should be kindergartens, etc. They all should be paid on private basis because they give you money, right? But they don't give you the right to use them as public resources. Also, you need to understand that capitalism is based on the reserved army of labor. I mean, the capitalist class wants people that are not employed. Through those people, they are implementing their control mechanisms. Basically, they are devaluing the labor and the salaries that you need to get. Yeah, that was another thing that I wanted to say. That when everything comes to making money, then it's really difficult to define the value of the non-productive labor, or the value is defined through the salary. But on the other hand, the freelance artists it's much more difficult because you don't have the opposite side that you're searching salary from, and everything is based on short contract agreements. Short contract agreements are not good, but they're not bad per se, because if through the short contract agreements you get the social benefits, pension, health, etc., then at least you have the basic social stability on which in which you can base your life in a certain community or society, etc. We need to discuss about strategies. I see that there is a deficit of creative idea about strategies for creating unions and defining the structural power in the economic institutional structure of freelance workers in that framework. I don't know, maybe we can discuss about that and we can be more precise and then see what kind of strategies are the best for positioning yourself in that economic structure. I honestly don't know what to say more. Maybe it would be better if I stop here. Maybe we can develop a discussion. I hope I managed to raise some questions. If I think of something else, I'll probably speak later. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kira. And I'm opening the floor for the audience. So, Ivana.
I will immediately start with the last, actually, what you said, Kira, about the possible strategies. And actually, when we talked about this symposium, you mentioned some ideas about possible strategies for joint collective actions between the freelancers. So maybe we can share some of the opinions, because we tackled so many kind of ideas also that we've done here, but also in the region and abroad. So maybe you can also share from your point of view different kind of ideas that we can maybe employ here on this fight.
Yeah, sure, I can share ideas, but the thing is, I'm not quite familiar with the status of the freelance culture workers. I know most of the people, but I don't know which kind of problems they're facing. You probably need to identify the problems that you are facing and need to address, and then maybe we can discuss about how can you do that in the institutional framework, you know? But yeah, there are a lot of obstacles for the non-formal workers in general, per se. Even the trade unions in Macedonia are against forming a union that will represent the non-formal workers. Another thing that I probably should mention, I mentioned that to Biljana previously. Currently, there is a discussion about the new labor law, and there are a lot of recommendations from the international institutions to divide the law on labor with the law on trade unions and collective negotiation. The trade unions are the biggest enemies of this division of the two laws. They're saying that workers do not read two documents. They don't read one document, and imagine if there are two documents, nobody will read it, which is not the true explanation. Actually, the true explanation is that they don't want anybody else to be part of the discussion about the new law on trade unions and collective negotiation. And it is my recommendation that you closely follow this development. And when the time comes to discuss about the new law on labor unions and collective negotiation, you as a freelance worker should be definitely involved in the process. And then maybe you can develop strategy based on the play that the stakeholders are playing. You know, you need to adapt a little bit. You know, which is kind of interesting. At the ministry, I will tell you now. Maybe I shouldn't, but there is not a lot of capacity to implement any kind of reform or development or whatever. Even at the Ministry of Finance, there is not much capacity. Maybe I sound too cynic or too pessimist, but the situation is the way it is. As I mentioned previously, there was a law on taxation which did not address the problem with the non-formal workers. Actually, they wanted to get the money from the non-formal workers and not give them rights, you know, which is another neoliberal concept of development and redistribution of money. Basically, everything is about money. Yeah, that's it. I don't know what else do you need more. Yeah.
I would like just to ask Kira, because you mentioned something about non-material labor, but no, I think nobody was mentioning this in this context, because most of us think that all labor is material, and you know, like it should be compensated. So in that sense, there is no such a division. There is division between artistic work and other works, other labor. You know, this was a division which was imposed by the fragmentation of labor, by the stratification of labor, and this is a contradiction, capitalist contradiction in which we are. So this is a starting point for connecting those two things. It was not something that we insisted that on this contradiction, on this division, but in contrary, to overcome this division. And I mean, just to clarify, so this was the idea. But it is very interesting what you were explaining about that actually half of the working population is in Macedonia, or probably in other neighboring countries, are not at all recognized by the official labor code. So we can discuss the labor code, but labor code is not connected to them. So in that sense, it is also interesting to talk about the law on trade unions, because I think there are very positive examples how trade unions actually managed to integrate precarious workers inside of the trade unions, or how they managed to practically to acknowledge precarious labor, like for example migrants working without papers in some countries. And through the recognition of this labor within trade unions came practically the demand for their labor rights and for being practically affected by the legislation of the labor code in those countries. So this was a kind of the first step. I was maybe mentioning yesterday that there is also a project about, for example, about workers, precarious workers, Roma, mostly Roma, from the Roma community in Serbia, who are working on collecting recycling materials, raw materials. And they already collaborate with one trade union in Nezavisnost is the name of this trade union. It's called Independent Trade Union. And so it goes into this direction, this collaboration. So I think if we talk about small steps, this could be some kind of option to practically go in this direction. So just to clarify some things.
I completely agree with you with the first and second point, but the thing is that maybe you misunderstood me about the non-material labor. Of course I understand, but you consider non-material labor in this kind of capitalist structure when you cannot put financial value on the product, you know, and then just everything. They believe that if you create culture, then you just spend money, you throw money in a black hole, whatever.
Oh,
you know? In that sense, yeah. That is why I'm saying non-material labor. It's not that I don't recognize it. By the way, it's not bad if you say it's a non-material labor. It's a labor, right? It's just. And the second point, the thing is that in Macedonia, the trade union scene is so monopolized that you need to deal with people who are racist, people who are xenophobes, and I know that it sounds really bad. I mean, I'm a trade unionist. I always have been, but now since I'm part of the social negotiation between trade unions and workers and employees, employers, whatever, Chamber of Commerce, I can see that there is no space for improvements from both sides. You know? They are both really conservative institutions. The trade union is really conservative institution. Imagine, I mean, they are saying that there shouldn't be a trade union that represents non-formal workers. The trade unions are saying this.
What they're saying?
That there shouldn't be a trade union representing non-formal workers. Yeah. Yeah, which is difficult because they want to monopolize. They want the monopoly still on the trade union scene. Yeah.
First question I would address to our guest from Croatia. The film industry is one of the biggest industries in the world, but it has the second biggest industry in the world or in the United States, but it has the lowest minimal wage. It's about $600. It's due to the fact that this industry is employing a lot of people, and so in a way it is everybody says, you know, Hollywood is a Hollywood is a red industry, but anyway I think that now the situation especially is in Eastern Europe due to the fact that Hollywood is moving there. I think it's the best now, and we would be lucky if we had the situation in Croatia. Do you think that if we change this regulation, that you suggested, then the situation for the film workers could be even worse? And the second question is for from our guest from Stip, from the textile industry. I remember that these factories, they had the resources on some destinations and everywhere else, but that was good for them. But for example, it wasn't good for me because my ancestors, my family, they were all subdued to the fact that our ancestors were collaborators. So we had to pay everything by ourselves. And I think that this is the reason why this system fall apart, which on the other side, I think that nobody is mentioning that a lot of these big firms that are on the West, they also have their kindergartens, their schools, and their summer resources like Google and the chemical industry in the States, and then the producers of palm olive in Italy and whatever, and almost every big firm has its facilities. So do you think that we have here in our country, in a post-communist countries, but I think this is most typical for the countries of Southeastern Europe, we have like a resentment towards this more liberal economy, because I think that in these countries actually the workers are living the best way. I mean, they have the best, they acquire the highest level of their social and workers' rights. So I think that maybe it is a problem in the local, public opinion and guidance. And the third question is for the representative of Ministry of Labor. Now, don't you find that the first thing that the new government, when the new government came, should have been to change the laws of Slavevski, because they're incredible, like for example, if you have an unpaid bill for the electricity, it doesn't withdraw even after 40 years. And these people are the poorest people. And on the other hand, if a politician steals like even $1 billion, then this debt is reduced after 8 years. So I think this is the problem of the labor situation. That's why people here are still starving. I think these laws should be, I told him personally on a debate like this in the face, and I told him that he made an incredibly unhuman law regulation, because everything is for the people on the top and nothing is for the other ones. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure if I understood. So you wanted to know, do I think if Macedonia changed the law about rebate of taxes, that it's going to become a filming destination, and you think it's good for workers in Macedonia? Is that right? No, I didn't understand. No, I didn't suggest that the change of regulation. I just said that, for example, you have example of Bulgaria that had also very big, in one period, very big production companies coming filming and creating a lot of professional film workers, and then from Bulgaria they moved to another country. So it's not a very, long-term thing. And so a lot of people now is moving from one industry like tourism industry to film worker industry. So they are becoming film workers because they got better contracts they got like okay money for 2 months of work. But then when the companies moved to, for example, Macedonia or Albania, we will have a lot of professional film workers who will not have jobs, because Croatian film industry is still not producing enough movies, and they have really different production conditions and really different fundings of the movies. And if you work for a film, for Croatian movie or some smaller art co-production, Europe co-production of independent movie, it's you are going to get less money. But then working conditions are also different, so it's a complex story. It's not just like it's a good. The productions that are coming to film there have very colonial approach to the locations they are filming in, and there is a lot of things to talk about in that case.
Just to add something that Kristina was talking about, the point is that making a visibility of a problem that low textile workers, like an organization, have done is the main thing of low textile worker and Kunsttextile in their strategic plan, especially of the textile workers and their problems. Example, the biggest visibility of the problem that we have made it through the cultural and art activities with Kunsttextile. And the making a visibility of a problem that we have made is, how to say, is the most important thing to start to resolving it in this case for the textile workers. In 3 years that we have worked, we have started low, like with little art and artistic installation. And after that, with education and making a critical mass of people who are supporting us every year more and more. And icing on a cake was Textiliada event every year. So we have called like Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Finance every year. So they can connect with the workers and start talking to resolve the problem that they have. The biggest success was that Low Textile Worker as an organization started working in the group of making the new labor law, and as of that, one of the problems that it will be solved is the precariat. Now the time period of allowed contract is like 5 years. For a worker can be working in a period of 3 months and 3 months and 3 months and 6 months, and now thanks to the Low Textile Worker and that organization that are helping us, like Helsinki Committee, we have made some improvement when you're working on a new law. You're making comments, and they have taken our comments to account, and now I think it will be shortened to 1 year, and no longer than 1 year. You can work on a period of 3 months and 6 months, and that's a big win for Low Textile Worker as an organization. And that's mainly of the visibility of the problem that we have made, and succeeded through not only with our activities, but with the help of our partners, not only from Macedonia but from abroad. When we have a problem, we are contacting all organizations like All of Palme and CCC campaign, who are sending comments to the ministries to acknowledge us as an organization and start talking to us to work on a problem. Yeah, and the biggest success is that 3 weeks ago we had the biggest protest in the last 30 years in Štip. Like 300 workers came to a protest in Štip voluntarily. Nobody has forced them, and that's a big step to making a new wave of making unions and cooperation among the textile workers, and that's a big acknowledgement for our work from the textile workers.
I can add something like to this session actually, and how it was conceived, and how and I think that this is basically the Low Textile Worker and the Cultural Artistic Center Textiles is basically a really nice example of what happened, really positive and inspirational example of what happened on the basis of solidarity and communal work, actually, of joint work towards like improving certain kind of situations, what's going on with the textile industry, but also the leather and you say leather and a garment, yes, industry, but still like the focus was on textile industry. But what I wanted to mention is basically that it started as really like low, as you said, like only basically as an artistic project, but also it received a lot of support from the organizations, not only from the art organization, but also from the different kind of organizations. So basically this initiative gained visibility in 1 year and really it really pushed, it really gained a lot of support and a lot of strength. So I'm really happy that basically, like the Helsinki Committee of Human Rights, but also the Faculty of Things That Can Be Learned, Lokomotiva, the Center for New Initiatives in Arts and Culture, really helped into empowering but also that you managed on your own to continue your work. So I think that we have to kind of, maybe at the end of this like 2.5 or maybe 1.5 days of conversations, this can be a really nice starting point how to all over start and rethink our position as culture workers or workers as well. This is my comment.
Look.
Do you have like an answer to his question?
Yeah, well, commenting on the law and adopting the law, implementing the law are two different things. I don't think it's a success that if you comment on the law. I mean, then the law goes to the parliament, and in the parliament.
Igor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are discussing here for 2 days. Maybe you didn't hear previously comments, and therefore we are just continue from the previous discussions. So maybe you can catch up a bit. And please, if you can now answer this question, maybe we will get there to you. So
it's not a success if you comment on the law. I mean, it is at some point, but at the end, it all depends on adopting the law and implementing the law. The law goes to the parliament, and then the lobbying starts. What do you think that the MPs will vote for? Would they be on the side of the workers or on the side of the Chamber of Commerce? What do you think? You know?
Is there some other comments?
It's not a success to comment on the law. They accepted the comment and implemented into the new draft law. Not that it's a success to comment the law. We were in the working group, like an organization, invited by the Ministry of Labor, and we were working on the law. Kristina was in the group, and they accepted the comments and make changes in the draft law, and we are. The biggest success it will be for the workers, not for us, that they will not be working in a short period of time no longer than 1 year. And now it's 5 years.
Okay. Comparing with the textile workers, I think we, the cultural workers, we are a step back because there is still not conscience even in the scene, culture scene, wider culture scene, that culture and art is labor. Is also that we are also workers. So even part of our group, Vicky, even Biljana were part of the group of the new law of culture, which is still in the process of, I think all comments are, now next step is going to the parliament. I still think this, even in the Ministry of Culture, even in our close circle of cultural workers, there is still not consciousness about the culture as a labor. So I think here we should work more on alliances with maybe textile workers or other workers, how to show, to make this question more visible and more concrete. Because okay, the law will be voted in the parliament, but what about the implementation? So there are problems in the ministry where they're still complaining about the fees of the artist. So they still think that we should work for a very small amount of money. So that's another question which will not be solved even if we have new law of culture. So I think here we should make this connection with the more, how to say, for the public is more, they believe more that on the problems of textile workers than the, so, I don't know, Kire, maybe.
Yeah, in that sense, I wanted to say that you should put more emphasis on the collective agreements more than on the law, because the collective agreement always provides you more rights than the law is providing you. So collective agreement is something more specific concerning the rights redistribution, etc. So if you're discussing about creation, that's an idea for a project, for example. Drafting a collective agreement for non-formal workers in the cultural industry, that can spark a lot of debate. And during that process, you can even form a union. When you decide what to, and there is an idea.
The thing is that I'm not agreeing in total with you, because when we say cultural workers, and now I will go to this institutional, non-institutional paradigm, which is very present and we cannot ignore it, because cultural workers and the rights of cultural workers is different, because within the institutions, as being employed in the public sector, they are treated as a labor. And then they are employed and they have salaries, and now they have collective agreements that even are, they are in the process of obtaining collective agreements that they should strengthen their position as a labor or as a workers, or strengthen their working rights. And this is this thing that Kira was saying about this institutional structure, economic structure, how it was, economic structure of institution. From the other side, the textile workers are also workers employed in the private sector, which means in both sides you have this a structure that is producing the possibility of asking the labor rights. And we are somewhere in between, having this law and culture that produces some kind of benefit system that kind of goes in communication with this working right law, but also with this law on different types of private bodies, but it's really not defined. So you are not here, you are not there, and you can be only employed by yourself, but you cannot impose collective agreement from yourself to yourself, So it's a different position, and we need to really start from this position and finding where to go for, especially within this new labor right law, and really to see how to,
I was discussing with Sanja Arsovska previously. She was also like 1 year or 2 years ago, nevertheless. And she also told me, like, we as a trade union want to insist on a new labor law and culture. And it's like, what is that? I still don't understand what is the law and culture. And then I told her, like, please insist on a collective agreement. That's your focus. That's your point. And it's good that they changed the strategy. They went for the collective agreement and not for the law and culture. I'm also saying that to you. If you want to fight for your rights, maybe it's better if and don't go through the law of culture, go through the law of labor.
But this is what I wanted to comment, actually. I think that while we are talking, it's probably that we are not really very well informed, and we don't know at the end where and how to penetrate towards into the laws where we can get the results out of it. And this is one thing what Violeta is saying, that we don't have a bodies from where we can, let's say, advocate or be unionized. And but another thing is this about this collective agreement that you are talking of, non-formal workers. This is never something that has been discussed, but I have to tell you that we started some kind of conversations, especially 3 years ago, I think, in this same place, talking about this collective agreement, even in the previous government, that we should unionize with the existing union of culture and find a way how to make this niche for the cultural workers in the independent scene. We didn't find a way how to deal with this because we didn't have means, time, and space to do it, because there is no association that would advocate for us. So therefore, we were tactically acting towards this, and when we have time, we are just going and asking for things, but there is no continuous dialogue, actually, which is happening. But would be maybe good if you can tell us a bit more in this sense, if this is possible, and how we can deal with this, and how we can advocate possibly through this law that you said it's in one side, how we can advocate to separate this law on unions, and how we can deal there, what we can do maybe there. Because as I say, because also this kind of ironization from your side, what is the law of culture? Actually, it's a one law from where we can relate to the labor law, but we didn't know as independent scene that maybe also through this law we can search for a collective agreement, or we can ask for a collective agreement. Why this law is stopped now is because actually the collective agreement for the institution is not voted or agreed. And if we knew maybe before, we could have asked this the same thing in the law of culture. So just observation of where we are.
Just shortly, the most effective way to gain the position that you want is through campaigns and lobbying. And Branimir Jovanović once stayed with me that while he was working in the Ministry of Finance, he was telling me that when they were creating the law on taxation, the new law on taxation, every day the representatives from the Chamber of Commerce were calling them about everything, about every stuff, about, you know, asking questions, giving ideas. There was nobody from the workers, there was nobody from the unions there, just from the Chamber of Commerce. So there's no consistency from our side. Workers are really passive. They don't have time, they don't have energy, they don't have the resources. But, you know, if you create a union based on solidarity, union based on cooperation with NGOs, union based in cooperation with lawyers, and etc., you will find and manage to gain the position. But nevertheless, always lead a campaign. Always lead a campaign. I think that campaigns are really important. Campaigns and lobbying.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you, everyone. It was really inspiring. So we have topics for the next 5 days, and next from the previous talk. So we have 10 days. Thank you, everyone. We are finished with this panel now. Now we are going to show you the movie of the Zrenjanin Film Forum, Workers Video Club, and then we have conclusion session. Okay, thank you.